it was a combination of the street network,
Sure.
right, and the putting together the kit of parts. So you've got multifamily, you mentioned, you've got townhouses, you've got condominiums, you've got single family homes. And how you put that together is the secret sauce of compatibility architecturally, as well as scale and massing, and creating a mixture of those to create a very organic neighborhood.
Sure.
Not unlike any of the other great Orlando neighborhoods, College Park, Delaney Park.
Beyond the Blueprint, welcome back. We are proudly sitting down with John Classe with VHB. We're on season 2, so we've done a lot of great episodes, had a lot of great guests. So we are thrilled to have John on. It's been a thing in the making. We've had to cancel a time or two.
We have. I apologize again for
Yeah,
that.
no worries. Scheduling today is tough, as we all know. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So John Classe, I am a raised Floridian,
Yeah.
right? And I'm a civil engineer by training, but I've had a very interesting career path between a couple different professions. At VHB, I've joined them about 9 months ago, and right now my role is the corporate real estate market leader for the firm. At VHB, we are civil engineers, transportation engineers, environmental scientists, planners. We've got an energy practice in sustainability and resiliency. So we do a broad reach to all of our clients in different sectors. And it's really sort of about the built environment.
Sure.
Everything outside of the building.
Sure. So, on our first episode, like I mentioned before, we want to get into some personal background. So you're an engineer by trade. Let's go about how did you get into that? Did you always like civil engineering? Did you like commercial development? Was that something that interested you from a very young age, or was it something you kind of just fell into?
Well, probably need to start back to high school, right? And so you're going through school and you're figuring out what you want to do in life and high school age, and you figure out what you're good at, right? And my mom and dad pushed me into the sciences, STEM, because I was good at math and some of those disciplines. But my dad was in business.
Sure.
So I went to Auburn University, and we went to see the campus when I was a senior. Went to the business school because that's my dad was in business, and went to the engineering college to look at both of them. And I'll never forget that the dean of the business school said, if you're not sure, go into engineering first, because if you don't like it, you can easily transfer to business and your credits would transfer.
Sure.
Going the other way is a difficult path because you would probably lose some time. So I went into engineering, and it just seemed to click in a lot of ways. I chose civil because I enjoy the outside.
Okay.
I enjoy being out in the environment. Not fun thinking about doing electrical, mechanical, and the area just was not very interested into me. So
when it's crazy because civil engineering and what you do now, you're tearing up the environment, right? To affect the built environment.
We're creating great places.
Sure.
We're placemakers.
Sure.
And that's what I enjoy about civil engineering. My path has been around and involved with a lot of cool projects in Central Florida. And part of the joy of my profession is seeing people embrace, enjoy, take advantage of the things that you had a small role in creating.
Sure. So out of college, what's your career experience start like?
Fortunate enough to get a job back in Orlando. So I came home and I worked for 2 different engineering firms for the first part of my career, both local, although they had a national footprint. And in the mid-'80s, I started working for private sector clients in real estate, so to speak. My first big one was working for Disney, and I worked for them as a consultant on numerous projects in the 80s and 90s. Started with several resort hotels. Some of them have since been renovated or partially demolished, so that tells you you get really old in life. When your projects you worked on get demolished. So I did that for the first 16 years or so of my career, and then I had a chance to become a developer. And I went to go develop the Baldwin Park project in downtown Orlando.
That was a staple project for Orlando, but you had some significant amount of time at Reedy Creek. So you want to explain that time and kind of what happened during that time?
Yep. So fast forward, a few years or decades, however you want to look at it. So,
And we'll jump back to Baldwin Park because that's
yeah,
a really
that's
interesting
fine,
topic.
no problem. So in 2015, I had a chance to get out of the development world again and join a local government, which was the Reedy Creek Improvement District at the time. And I thought that was a very interesting place to help round out my career.
Sure.
Being a civil engineer, being a developer, and now being part of local government, it's kind of the three sides of any type of real estate activity
Sure.
that you're doing. And Reedy Creek down at Disney is a very unique government entity in its purpose. And I thought it was really, I've been around it for decades working on Disney projects. And I thought it was a really great place to wrap up a career.
Yeah. So let's go, before we dive in a little bit to there, let's go back to the Baldwin Park. So what was the thought process behind Baldwin Park? For those of you who don't know, it's a self-standing community, homes, multifamily, grocery anchored center, a lot of things to do, a lot of great place to raise a family, great schools around, great part of the area. But walk us through just what that was like, especially from the early onset.
So a lot of you may not know that Baldwin Park was the Orlando Naval Training Center.
Yep.
Back starting in 1967 is when it became a Navy base. Before that, it was an Army Air Corps base during World War II. So it's got a history of being in Orlando, a part of the military family. So back in I guess it was mid-90s when the BRAC commission came through with the federal government about closing and realigning a lot of military bases, Orlando Naval Training Center was on the block. And so it closed. And the city of Orlando, through the Navy, organized a developer competition, right, to be an RFP. But part of that process and part of the BRAC process was for the government, both the city and the federal government, to decide what the property was going to be converted into.
Sure.
So the city did a lot of early planning and master planning before it came to an RFP. And the city of Orlando at the time was exploring a new urbanism, traditional design approach through the planning team that was there at the city. So they kind of set that direction through the initial master planning. And the team I was on, that I eventually joined, won the rights to develop the property. And then we took that framework that the city set up and then just put it on steroids, so to speak, to really dive into all the details, learning from great examples in the Southeast of traditional design and how to do it in a 2000s approach.
Sure. And so what was, so you speak, so the steroids, right? So what were some of those steroids? Like, what was their master plan from an early onset to what you guys did to implement that on a very high level?
So it was a combination of the street network, right, and the putting together the kit of parts. So you've got multifamily, you mentioned, you've got townhouses, you've got condominiums, you've got single family homes. And how you put that together is the secret sauce of compatibility architecturally, as well as scale and massing, and creating a mixture of those to create a very organic neighborhood.
Sure.
Not unlike any of the other great Orlando neighborhoods, College Park, Delaney Park. Those places have a variety of houses, a variety of styles, a variety of lot widths. And so we emulated that. That's the steroids component to it, of the high level framework the city set up. And then we got into the details to make it happen.
Sure. Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. So when you're looking, because essentially it's a master plan mixed use development, right? And so when you're looking at that, how important is that grocery anchored center and then all the commercial that surrounds it in bringing all of your residential multifamily to help the demographic and the geography of that development?
When you look at that, probably the commercial real estate developers out there would say that was the worst place to put a grocery center.
All the way in the back.
All the way in the back, right in the middle of the community, right?
Sure.
You want to be on 50 or you want to be on Bennett Road.
Sure.
But the master plan the city came up with was to kind of create more of a neighborhood retail development that's going to support the surrounding homes in Baldwin Park and then the surrounding homes in Audubon Park and a little bit to the north in Winter Park.
Sure.
So it became a center on Lake Baldwin. And so that was a fundamental, which was really contrary to real estate. But I think it was pretty key to creating a heart of the community.
Do you think that because you have the Lake Baldwin right there and all of your commercial sits, I mean, it's not frontage, but it's pretty close to the lake. You know, you see like Apopka, you see, Eustis. I mean, you see a lot of those developments from a comp planning standpoint, they're trying to push more towards the water for the commercial. Do you think that's something that's on a new type of like development perspective, or do you think that's something that's always been there? It's like, hey, let's get people where they are close to the water, and then we kind of build around that.
If you look historically, that's where commerce and activity was on the water. That's how people commuted or traveled, was by water. And so that's where the industry started. That's where the commercial was. That's where the trade was happening. Then over the years, we started to privatize the lakes and make them private and only limited to the number of homes that you could build up against it or on the shoreline. So that was a switch in kind of going back to the old philosophy in 2000, and that was the framework of the master plan that the city came up with. And I think the principal tenet of new urbanism is to create more public spaces and not privatize those spaces.
Especially here in Florida, you know, the weather's, although it's hot, you know, it is typically, you know, pretty nice weather. People want to be outside kind of doing things, going to the brewery, going to, you know, shops or whatever, you know, and Lake Baldwin has done, I mean, I lived there for a little over a year. They've done a phenomenal job, whether it's like the food trucks or on the first Friday, they get all the tents out on almost bringing that community together. And in my opinion, I think if it was not on the lake, it probably wouldn't be as appeasing as it is. Would you agree to that, or?
I would.
Yeah.
Water has a sense of calming people, right? You want to be around the water. Maybe it's human nature. So I had the joy of working on Celebration for Disney. Did a lot of work down there, and you know they have their town center on the water, on a man-made lake. And I can remember early when that opened, being down there, still doing some design work or walking around looking at things and just seeing the life created in that space by having that open air water park, you know, a park that's a water body, was just tremendous. And so we kind of sort of took that same philosophy, but on steroids, because you can fit the entire Baldwin Park town center from the golf clubhouse down to the Celebration town center because of the size and the scale so different. On the lake.
So let's go to your experience at Reedy Creek, right? It's its own individual governmental, you know, authority. So what was that like? I mean, obviously there's certain challenges, there's certain things. Obviously you got Disney World that's there and it's governed, you know, it governs Disney World. Like what was some of the things that you had to overcome being there and being its own type of governing authority?
So I had a philosophy of government and what government was created to do, right? And so Reedy Creek was a created government by Disney and all the taxpayers down there. And there are 350 plus taxpayers that fund the district. And so when that was created, and the focus when I was there was to serve the taxpayers and do everything you can and provide your government services to help them with their businesses, because it's really an economic development engine is what the district can help support, and which is what it did. So the challenge we had was continue to stay focused on doing great government, high level of service, but also you're the government service and you have a code, you have rules, and you have to enforce those on your taxpayers and your applicants for building, permitting, construction. So there's a natural tension that goes on between that, and whether it's Orlando and a developer in Orlando, right? There's tension between regulatory authorities and their customers. And so we continue to keep that tension. You know, even though that we were funded primarily by Disney, they were the largest taxpayer, we still had a job to do to protect the code,
Right.
protect our role, be fiduciary to all taxpayers. And
Sure.
so that was a constant challenge,
Sure.
as well as the opposite of that, of where government can overreach and go
Right.
too far. And so that was a battle and a daily challenge that we have to, and I think all governments have to kind of do that on a daily basis.
Do you think the fact that Disney played such a significant role in the governmental authority of Reedy Creek caused more issues than good?
Good question. I think because the district is more of a commercial district,
Mm-hmm.
it can stay focused on that commercial side.
Sure.
And it was created for that purpose, like economic development, where other governments, they have schools and they have residents, they have parks, they have other challenges that they have to deal with, where we were focused on the economic side
Sure.
of the taxpayers. So it helps Disney being a very obviously active taxpayer because they're funding the majority of it. There was a great collaboration of making sure that we were aligned with them. If they had things that were coming up, we needed to make sure that we were staffed appropriately and focused appropriately to help them achieve their goals.
Sure.
So it helps having a larger taxpayer to kind of help focus the government
Sure.
in the right direction.
Well, and I would imagine, especially with Disney, I mean, because you think about, Orange County, city of Orlando, I mean, anywhere, because, I mean, essentially Disney is the organization, but they're also in some ways a development company, right? They're
Yeah.
building new stuff all the time. And so kind of having them as that major taxpayer and having that collaboration between the governmental authority kind of allows them to have that symbiotic relationship, because as they're going to continue to grow, the authority can grow as well. Whereas like you get here and, Orange County might not be staffed appropriately, and you might have developers come in and, or Polk County or Lake County or wherever, and developers come in, and then all of a sudden you've got billions of dollars of development going on and the city doesn't have enough people to service those.
I think that gets back to being focused,
Sure.
right? Or we're focused on, they're the driver
Sure.
in the district, right? As they grow, the other taxpayers grow,
Sure.
right? So they're the pebble in the pond, right? And so if we need to stay focused on their activities, because it will help all the taxpayers in the district, and it helps all of Central Florida
Sure.
and all of Florida at the same time. So it does help so that we all stay on the task at hand, and so you don't get distracted, right? Because other governments, Orange County, they have other things that come up, and they can almost like get distracted, but there are other priorities, where we had one priority, which was helping Disney and the other taxpayers create a great place for people to come and enjoy a vacation.
Are you ready to go beyond the blueprint? Introducing Nexus, the ultimate game changer for commercial real estate and development professionals. Nexus revolutionizes how deals are made and projects come to life. With our cutting-edge SaaS platform, we're revolutionizing the built environment, making your workflow seamless. Vendors gain instant access to opportunities tailored to their needs, while organizations find consultants, vendors, and contractors with the click of a button. Our all-in-one mapping and deal-making interface powers municipalities and site selectors to shape the future of cities nationwide. Join Nexus today and be a part of the future of commercial real estate and construction. Visit our website now to pre-register and get immediate access to what is to come. Visit gonexus.us. The power to transform your project starts here. Do you have any scenarios that you would like to talk about that might have been like aha moments, or like, oh man, we could do this better, or they did really great, or we did really great on this project, or anything like that?
Well, a couple stories. So people think about because Disney's the taxpayer and we should do everything that they want us to do, right? But I have a personal experience where we were working with them on trying to open the Frozen attraction in Norway. And there is a integrative system service test, like an ISST, where you test the entire systems for emergency. So if the lights go, if a fire alarm goes off, what should happen in the building for safety reasons to get the guests out? What happens to the ride? What happens to the music? What happens to all that, so that you can effectively evacuate if necessary? Sure. And there's levels of emergency response in that regard. Well, it wasn't working yet. And so they were continuing changing the code to make sure it would function correctly. And they had guests waiting to use the ride.
Yeah.
And we said, you can't open.
Wow.
You can't open until the ride is functioning as you've designed it, as you want it to function, how it needs to function for the safety of the guests. And so I had several meetings that day of going out to the site and with the team that was inspecting it and having meetings with the Disney leadership. I went on the ride. Said, come on, John, see how great the ride is. Yeah, it's a great ride, but you can't open it. It's not ready. So they would go back and I said, we're here. We'll stay here. Go fix it, and we'll test it right away so we can help you open it up right away. So our approach is not to go away. Well, hey, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll come back in 2 days, see if you get it right. No, we're here to help you get it open. And we did. But we don't open it until it's ready.
It's safe.
It's safe. It's safe.
Yeah, I mean, that's another good point is that, having the collaboration between the governmental authority and especially Disney. I mean, the more days that they're closed, the more revenue that they're losing, right? Essentially. Now, those people can go on other rides or whatever. I mean, they're at the parks. But, I would imagine that it definitely is in their best interest to continue that relationship so that things can kind of process forward so that, Reedy Creek is on board with them opening and then also, ensuring the safety of all their people that are there.
Yep. Yeah, there's guests in the park, right? They're not going to go, right?
Right.
And they're going to be disappointed, and Disney will try to make things right for them for that inconvenience of a ride breaking or not opening on time. So they get that. And I'm sure the city of Orlando and Orange County do the same thing with Universal Studios and SeaWorld to try to help them accomplish their goals. So the guests that are coming to Orlando have a great experience because it helps all of us in Central Florida. But having a dedicated government team like we had at the Reedy Creek with the building inspectors and permit reviewers and so forth that are there that will show up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do a light level test or the ISST test, we were there. That everybody that went to work there knew that was our role and was willing to go through those extra efforts to support all of our taxpayers.
Sure. So how do you get to VHB? Aside from Sean dragging you to, and then explain what you do at VHB and kind of where you're at.
Yeah. So when all the stuff changed at Reedy Creek and became the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, it was time for me to move on. And so I left in the late summer of last year. And I was exploring a path to go back into real estate development again, where I came from a couple different times, or go into consulting engineering. And I knew Sean for several years.
Big Disney guy.
Big Disney guy, former cast member like myself. And I knew some of the leadership at VHB locally. Their structure of a company and what they do is very similar to my previous consulting engineering roles earlier in my career. And so it felt really good to go back and kind of in that environment. And so it just sort of worked out. They had an opportunity and I was available, and it sort of all stars kind of aligned and,
Sure.
and doors opened up at the right time for me. Yeah.
And your role there predominantly day to day is what?
Yeah, so my role is the corporate real estate market leader. So I have a couple different jobs. It's a little business development. It's working on key projects for key clients and looking at the real estate market within our corporate footprint and try to help and align our business activities, business development activities to where the real estate market is going. Mm-hmm. So several years ago, as an example, the earlier team, I wasn't there yet, but the earlier team said, industrial market is going to start to come back or have a big push. And so we put a team together to pursue industrial market opportunities, and we built kind of a practice around that. Sure. We do a lot of that in the Mid-Atlantic region as well as here in Central Florida. So that's the job of me, and I have 4 regional leaders that we work on, whether it's housing, multifamily, or attainable housing, or senior housing, or student housing, to retail, to commercial and industrial. And then, of course, down here, it's themed entertainment and hospitality.
Sure. So, let's take a couple steps back and kind of walk through just your experience on being in the commercial, we call it built environment, development environment. that your career has been phenomenal. You've had a lot of experience in multiple different, areas, not only from your trade, but also in companies, like VHB and, in governmental authorities and things like that. Walk us through like what that thought process was of like why did you have the forefront to figure out, hey, I need to go do this, then I need to do this and do this. Because, I would think that, especially as an early, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're getting into the space, you kind of get singular focus. And there's a lot of conflict in some advice of like, oh, you need to just be focused on just this and just do this really well. And I tend to disagree with that analogy just simply because I do believe that there's a significant benefit of being well rounded. I think you need to get experience. You need to get, time. You got to put time in under your
Yep.
belt in different trades, different avenues. But walk us through like why you thought to do that and what benefit has it made or impact has it made on your career and your trajectory?
So I don't know if this was from my father or what, but wherever you are, this is what I've learned. You should do the best job that you can, right? It's my job, right? And I will be the best I can at it. And one of my other philosophies is in every situation you have a chance to learn
Sure.
and ask questions. I've been very fortunate in my career to be in the room.
Hmm.
You want to be in the room.
Sure.
You may not have anything to add. Doesn't matter.
You might not even be at the table if you just be at the
just
room.
be in the room,
Right.
right? To hear what's going on
Sure.
and observe and learn. And I've been fortunate enough through my career, I've had opportunities to do that. And so that always put me in a good position for my next challenge, my next step, by
Sure.
having those experiences. Not that I was realizing it at the time. That's another reason why civil engineering is kind of fun. It's very broad,
Mhm.
and you can be very well rounded in different types of civil engineering and different product lines and markets. And so it gives you that broad landscape to be a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
But
It's better than a master of none.
that's right, it is. But it gives you what that did for me was give me a depth or a breadth of experience.
Sure.
So when doors opened up, I'd have multiple choices of what door to go through.
Sure.
And early in my career, I did walk through some doors. I made a change from one engineering firm to the other. That was leaving an ownership of one company to go join another company to go work on the celebration project. Best decision, not that I ever made. Married my wife. That was the best decision I made. But that was a great career decision. So I learned a lot about master plan communities. And if I didn't walk through that door, I would not have had the opportunity to go do Baldwin Park
Sure.
on the developer side.
Sure.
So, and I got the celebration opportunity because of all the great work I was doing at my first firm for Disney. So doing great work, being in the room, opening up your eyes and just learning
Right.
puts you in good positions for the next opportunity.
Sure. So there's a couple of things that I want to point on that. Is like the first one is how do you get in the room? So walk us through that.
You got to find a good mentor,
Yeah.
right? You got to find somebody that's willing to take you to the room.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm going to enjoy at VHB is to bring people with me to meetings, to project teams, to be in the room for them to learn and grow.
Mhm.
And that's what VHB's actually launching a program tomorrow in Boston
There you go.
along those same lines
That's awesome.
about client leadership and client experience. So you need to have those mentors that you align with. And I've been fortunate enough to have those at the firms I worked with. And part of that mentorship was giving me some rope, right, to learn on my own
Sure.
and fail. You only get experience by failing.
Sure.
And so, and taking a chance.
Yeah. So and then we'll kind of have one question, then we'll end and go to episode 2. But I've always been a big proponent of the same philosophy. You've got to be in the room. However you get in the room, you don't have to be sitting at the table. You got to figure out how to get in the room. Obviously, relationships are, and regardless of what business you're in, relationships are the number one thing that people should be focused on. I think it is, especially in today, tremendously overlooked. I think people talk about it, but actually doing it and building strong relationships that are genuine is something that is missing, and as younger generations come up, it's going to continue to be missed. And I think people need to focus on that. And I think mentors and becoming mentors to younger people and explaining that is massive. And I
Yeah.
think if you can do that, you can put yourself in scenarios that opportunities kind of present themselves. So the last question would be like evaluating you said get in the room, those opportunities will come, those doors will open, and then evaluating the risk associated with those doors, right? Because especially earlier on in your career, you want to be head in the sand, learning as much as you can, trying to do this. Then an opportunity may come. How do you go about analyzing that risk of like this door I should walk through? This is the next season of life. This door is shutting, or do I just stay comfortable, stay where I'm at, and continue to put my head down?
So if you have an opportunity, right? So for one of my other things is have fun in life,
Mhm.
right? And so as an example, so when I left my work at Celebration, that engineering firm, to go do Baldwin Park, I was on the career path of corporate leadership at that firm. And that's what you kind of try to work for, right? You try to work up the ladder. And I was debating about whether to make that change because I was leaving one career, go to that door open, right? How do I make that decision, go to a completely different career?
Mhm.
And my wife goes, when were you the happiest? And I said, well, I was happy when I was working hard, creating a design for Celebration that now I get to see people really enjoy.
Sure.
That was happiness. I enjoyed that. And she goes, well, go do Baldwin Park. It's the same thing.
Sure.
And I was in my 30s. If it doesn't work out, that's okay.
You got time.
I got time.
Yeah.
I've got another notch in the belt, right, of experience that I can use and build on for whatever the next door that opens up.
Would you say that as you kind of, when you were at Celebration and you were on that track record of getting into leadership, in a way, your passion for what you originally was doing or you started doing kind of faded because you're now more leading people, running the company, trying to worry about other things rather than the thing that drew you to that place?
There's a lot of that,
Yeah.
right? You advance and grow in your career farther and farther away from what you went to school for.
Right.
And you do lose some of that.
Sure.
Where you just, if you enjoy it, you have to find a path that lets you still keep your fingers wet, right? And your fingers dirty
Sure.
into those activities. And I've got a role at VHB that still lets me do that, right? I
Right.
still meet with clients. I still get involved with projects. And I still have this other larger corporate role, which is mentoring people and building the business.
Sure.
But it may take you a little bit of time to go through that journey to get to the other side where you can do both.
Sure. I want to focus on that, but we'll wrap this up and we'll circle back to that on the next
Okay.
episode. So
All right.
Beyond the Blueprint, this has been the first episode with John Classe at VHB. I'm your host, Branson Bowen. Make sure you stay tuned and join us for episode 2. See you soon.